Imagine a world where the rain isn't water, but molten glass, slicing through the air at thousands of miles per hour. A planet where the winds scream at speeds faster than a bullet, tearing apart anything unlucky enough to be caught in the storm. Now picture a place where the entire surface is a burning ocean of lava, so hot that even metal would evaporate in seconds. Or worse, a gas giant with a core so dense that if you fell in, you'd be crushed into atoms before you even realized what happened. These aren't scenes from a nightmare. These are real places, orbiting distant stars, defying logic and reason. Planets so extreme, so violent, that they shouldn't even exist, but they do. And today, we're going to explore the 10 most terrifying of them all. Brace yourself, because what you're about to hear might just make you appreciate the safety of Earth a whole lot more. Imagine a world where the sky is in a perpetual storm, where the wind never stops howling, and where rain isn't made of water but of molten glass. This is HD 189733b, a gas giant located 63 light-years away in the constellation Vulpecula. On this distant exoplanet, the atmosphere is a chaotic realm of violent winds and razor-sharp precipitation, a place where life as we know it would be shredded in moments. The planet is a deep, mesmerizing blue, a color that might remind you of the tranquil seas of Earth. But this shade comes not from water, but from silicate particles in the atmosphere. Under the blistering heat of its parent star, these particles condense into glass. When caught in the planet's ferocious winds, the molten glass rains down, blowing sideways at over 5,400 miles per hour, about 8,700 kilometers per hour. To put that into perspective, these winds are nearly 7 times faster than the strongest hurricanes on Earth. HD 19733b is classified as a hot Jupiter, a gas giant that orbits incredibly close to its star. It is tidally locked, meaning one side is perpetually scorched by sunlight, while the other remains in eternal darkness. This extreme heat creates dramatic temperature differences that fuel its deadly winds. The dayside temperature can reach around 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit, about 930 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt silicates into glass and keep the storms endlessly raging. The storms on HD 189773b are not like the storms on Earth. Imagine a hurricane where every droplet is a shard of glass, where the sky is filled with a mist of molten particles. Visibility would be nearly zero. Light itself struggles to penetrate the dense, turbulent clouds, making the planet a dark and ominous place. It is a world where survival would be impossible, where every gust of wind is a weapon. But how do scientists know so much about a planet that is so far away? The answer lies in the incredible power of modern telescopes and the ingenious methods used to study distant worlds. When HD 189733b passes in front of its star, light filters through its atmosphere, allowing scientists to analyze its composition. The Hubble Space Telescope played a crucial role in discovering its blue color and the violent weather within its clouds. What makes HD 189733b so unsettling is not just its bizarre weather, but the sheer hostility of its environment. Imagine standing on a surface, if it even had one, where every breeze is a torrent of molten glass, where the air itself is a deadly weapon. You wouldn't last a second in this world. The combination of extreme heat, violent winds, and glass rain creates a setting more fitting for a nightmare than reality. The winds alone are enough to instill fear. Moving at over 5,400 miles per hour, they could carry a human body and shred it within moments. For comparison, the strongest winds ever recorded on Earth during a hurricane reached about 254 miles per hour, 408 kilometers per hour. The winds on HD 189733b are more than 20 times faster, and they never stop. The storm is eternal, an unending cycle of destruction that dominates the entire planet. The glass rain only adds to the horror. As the silicate particles condense, they form molten glass droplets that are caught in the wind. These droplets would strike with the force of a bullet, slicing through anything in their path. There is no shelter, no reprieve, just a ceaseless bombardment from the sky. The planet's atmosphere is a blender of sharp molten glass swirling around at unimaginable speeds. What if a spacecraft were to approach this planet? Even the most advanced technology would struggle to survive. The heat would warp metal, the winds would destabilize any flight, and the glass rain would erode the craft's surface. The journey to the surface would be like descending into a cosmic sandblaster, a slow but certain destruction. And then there's the visual horror. The sky would appear fractured, a swirling mass of blue and gray with the glass rain reflecting faint, scattered light. It would look like the sky itself was made of knives. Every gust of wind would send shards flying, creating a landscape where every step is a gamble with death. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of HD 189733b is its unpredictability. Storms could form in an instant. The winds could shift, sending molten glass in new directions. The darkness of the clouds would make it nearly impossible to see the danger coming. It is a place where your senses would betray you, where safety is an illusion, and where the planet itself seems determined to erase any trace of your presence. This world is a natural defense mechanism against life. It is a reminder that not every corner of the universe is welcoming or even survivable. There are places where the laws of nature conspire to create settings that are not just inhospitable, but actively hostile. HD 189733b is a planet that should not exist, and yet it does, orbiting its star, hiding its dangers beneath a deceptively beautiful blue facade. If somehow, against all odds, you could stand on the surface of HD 189733b, the experience would be more like a nightmare than a dream. The first thing you'd notice is the intense heat. With the temperature soaring to over 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit, 930 degrees Celsius, the air would feel thick and oppressive, as though you were standing inside an oven. The heat would warp any equipment, and your own body would quickly begin to suffer from heat stroke. Your surroundings would be an alien blur. The sky, if it could even be called that, would be a swirling mass of dark clouds and flashing, molten glass raining down at hurricane-force speeds. Even the most protective suits would offer little comfort. The wind alone would tear them apart in seconds, and the molten glass would slice through them like paper. Visibility would be almost non-existent. The storm would obscure everything in sight. Light itself would be bent and distorted by the turbulent atmosphere, casting everything in an eerie glow. There would be no safe horizon to fix your gaze upon, just the eternal whirling of the planet's vicious weather. As the glass rain pelted the surface, it would constantly erode and break down anything it touched. Even the sturdiest materials would eventually be worn away by the relentless barrage. In truth, if you were able to see HD 18973b from above, you would be staring at an apocalyptic scene, a swirling mass of glass-filled clouds darkened by the thick vapor, constantly shifting. The scene would be like a nightmare, as if the atmosphere itself were alive, aware, and hostile, waiting to tear apart anything that came too close. Any attempt to reach the surface of this planet would result in nothing less than obliteration. The horrifying beauty of this world isn't only in its chaotic atmosphere, but in how it might appear to an observer from a safe distance. Imagine watching a planet whose surface is obscured by unending storms, where no light can pierce the clouds to reveal any hint of what's below. The very act of observing this world would invoke a sense of dread, knowing that any object sent to explore it would be lost to the violent forces above. It is a reminder that not all beauty in the universe is benign. Some of it is a warning, a signal that this is a place where no living thing could endure. What makes HD 189733b truly terrifying is that it is a place where life simply cannot exist. The combination of its boiling temperatures, violent winds, and glass rain forms an environment so hostile that it makes the harshest places on Earth look welcoming. The atmosphere's chemistry, as well as its constant turmoil, leaves no room for even the simplest form of life to take root. In fact, it would be an incredibly dangerous endeavor for anything, organic or synthetic, to try and settle there. There's a distinct beauty in the fact that the universe is full of worlds like HD 189733b, planets that are so extreme that they render the very concept of survival meaningless. They exist not as reminders of the possibility of life, but as testament to how varied and complex the universe is. HD 189733b doesn't just challenge our ideas of what a planet is, it shatters them completely. The planet's extreme conditions make it a prime example of what scientists call exoplanetary extremes, showing us how diverse and unpredictable the universe can be. As we discover more exoplanets in the coming years, it will become increasingly clear that life as we know it may be a rarity, and that there are countless other worlds like HD 189733b that offer no hope for life, or even for survival. Imagine a planet so close to its star that it is slowly being pulled apart by the intense tidal forces at play. This is WASP-12b, a gas giant located about 600 light-years away in the constellation Auriga. This planet is so close to its parent star that it is being stretched and warped, with the forces from the star gradually ripping it apart. This cosmic violence creates one of the most terrifying planetary environments we've ever discovered. TRES-2b is a gas giant located about 750 light-years from Earth in the constellation of Lyra. It is one of the darkest planets ever discovered, reflecting almost no light, making it one of the most eerie and terrifying planets known to science. What makes TRES-2b so horrifying is its extreme darkness. The planet reflects less than 1% of the light that hits it. To put that into perspective, even the darkest objects on Earth, such as black coal or the surface of charcoal, reflect around 4 to 5% of light. TRES-2b is so dark that it seems to absorb all light, which gives it an almost otherworldly appearance when observed from space. This lack of reflection makes it a haunting world that seems to swallow up any light that tries to touch it. What we're witnessing with TRES-2b is a planet that has evolved to be nearly invisible in the universe. Its darkness comes from a combination of factors, including the planet's atmosphere, which contains chemicals like sodium, potassium, and titanium oxide. These chemicals absorb light and heat, leaving the planet in a constant state of night. As a result, TRES-2b is a world shrouded in darkness, its features almost impossible to discern from afar. This planet may seem like a void, a place where light is permanently extinguished, making it one of the creepiest planets that exist. Despite its eerie darkness, TRES-2b is far from cold. The planet is a gas giant, and it is incredibly close to its star, orbiting in a period just 2.5 days. This close proximity means that the planet is subjected to immense heat, reaching temperatures around 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,000 degrees Celsius. The dark atmosphere traps heat and intensifies the already extreme conditions, creating a scorching world that is anything but lifeless. The surface, which is mostly made up of gases, likely contains pockets of molten rock and clouds of gas that swirl with violent storms. The heat on TRES-2b is so intense that any form of matter would burn up instantly, leaving nothing but a gas-churning wasteland. If you were to stand on the surface, hypothetically of course, you would be subjected to the oppressive heat, intense radiation, and darkness that would make survival utterly impossible. TRES-2b's atmosphere is thick with gases that trap heat and light, further adding to its inhospitable nature. The chemicals in the atmosphere, like sodium and titanium oxide, absorb the light from the star and prevent it from escaping. This creates an effect called thermal inversion, which means that the atmosphere is hotter the higher you go, leading to constant and violent storm activity. With no light and extreme heat, the atmosphere on TRES-2b would be an ever-churning, unstable environment. The constant storms would whip through the planet, fueled by the intense heat and pressure. Imagine a world where it's always night, where violent weather systems rage through an ever-dark sky, and where the heat is unbearable. This is not a planet that could sustain any form of life. Its atmosphere is toxic, suffocating, and utterly hostile. One of the most chilling aspects of TRES-2b is the fact that it's in a constant state of perpetual night. With no reflection from the planet's surface and its atmosphere absorbing all the light from its nearby star, TRES-2b is a world locked in eternal darkness. Imagine being on a planet where the sun never rises, and the world around you is submerged in an abyss of blackness. For any theoretical life forms, or even for human observers, the absence of light would create a sense of claustrophobia and isolation that is hard to fathom. The feeling of endless night would be unnerving and oppressive. The lack of any visible sources of light, combined with the intense heat and storms that are ever present, would make the environment even more suffocating. The darkened sky would only be pierced by the occasional flash of lightning or the violent gusts of wind tearing through the atmosphere, making it a world where nothing is ever at rest. It's a planet that doesn't just lack light. It distorts perception and traps anyone or anything that ventures too close in a state of endless, crushing darkness. Charies 2b isn't just a planet, it's a psychological and existential nightmare. The sheer darkness is oppressive, a void where time itself seems to lose meaning. Without a sunrise or sunset, there is no rhythm, no change, no sense of progress. You would exist in a reality where time drags endlessly, with no visual cues to mark the passage of hours, days, or even years. It is a place where existence is not just physically unbearable, but mentally suffocating. Imagine the disorientation of being trapped in an environment where your senses offer no reliable information. No horizon, no shifting shadows, no sense of direction. Just an overwhelming, featureless abyss. The mind, desperate for input, might start to create its own, twisting the darkness into illusions, forming shapes out of the void. The crushing silence, broken only by the violent storms and the howling of superheated winds, would only amplify the psychological torment. And then there's the heat, an unbearable, all-consuming force. It's not the kind of heat you'd find in a desert where relief might come with nightfall or shade. Here, there is no respite. The very air is scorching, filled with volatile gases that trap radiation and turn the atmosphere into a furnace. The moment you step into this world, survival is impossible. There is no escape, no shelter, and no hope. But perhaps the most chilling realization is that Charies 2b is just one of many. The universe is filled with planets like this, silent, lifeless, and utterly inhospitable. For every Earth-like world that might harbor life, there are countless others that exist as blackened wastelands, absorbing light, crushing any possibility of survival, and drifting through space as cosmic tombs. Charies 2b is terrifying not just because of what it is, but because it reminds us of how rare and fragile life truly is. It is a world that swallows light, erases time, and ensures that nothing, no creature, no thought, no memory could ever survive. It is the embodiment of cosmic horror, an abyss where the very concept of existence is rendered meaningless. WASP-12b orbits its star in a mere 1.1 days, meaning it completes a full revolution in just over a day. As a result, the planet is so close to its star that its surface temperature reaches a searing 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit, about 2,400 degrees Celsius. This blistering heat is enough to vaporize metals, turning the planet's atmosphere into a thick soup of ionized gas. The planet is also classified as a hot Jupiter, a type of gas giant that orbits extremely close to its star. But what makes WASP-12b particularly horrifying is how it's slowly being consumed by its parent star. The intense heat causes the planet to puff up, and the powerful gravitational forces from the star are stretching and distorting it into an oblong shape. Over time, the star's tidal forces are literally pulling material from WASP-12b's atmosphere, causing it to slowly evaporate away. The planet is being devoured, piece by piece, by the very star it orbits. This process is happening at an alarming rate, and within a few million years, WASP-12b could be completely consumed by its star, leaving behind nothing but a faint trace of what was once a planet. Scientists have even observed the planet's atmosphere being stripped away, with the escaping gases trailing behind the planet like a comet's tail. WASP-12b's proximity to its star creates a cosmic horror scenario, one where the planet is being literally torn apart by the gravitational forces acting on it. This process is known as stellar tidal disruption, and it's a terrifying reminder of the destructive power stars can wield over nearby planets. The star's gravity is so immense that it exerts a tidal force on WASP-12b, stretching it out of its natural shape. Instead of being a nice spherical planet, WASP-12b is elongated like a bloated, burning balloon. These tidal forces also play a key role in the planet's ultimate fate. As the star continues to draw material from the planet, the atmosphere of WASP-12b begins to dissipate into space. The upper layers of its atmosphere are blown away by the intense radiation from the star, forming a long, faint trail of evaporated gases. Scientists can observe this process using telescopes, seeing the remnants of the planet's atmosphere slowly being siphoned away like water draining from a sink. It's an eerie sight, a planet not dying but slowly being consumed by its very existence. The sheer scale of the forces at play is enough to make you realize how fragile planets really are. It's almost as if WASP-12b is caught in a slow-motion disaster, a drawn-out apocalypse that will eventually consume it whole. The idea of a planet being ripped apart at such a pace is enough to make any observer appreciate the incredible violence that can occur in the universe. The extreme heat on WASP-12b creates an atmosphere unlike anything we can experience here on Earth. With temperatures soaring past 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,400 degrees Celsius, the planet is constantly bathed in an inferno of radiation. This intense heat vaporizes metals and causes the atmosphere to shimmer and distort with the constant boiling of gases. The heat is so severe that it can cause elements like titanium to exist in vapor form, floating freely in the atmosphere. This constant state of heat doesn't just create a planetary hellscape, it also fuels violent wind systems. The scorching temperatures create temperature gradients across the planet's surface, which then drives high-speed winds, reaching speeds of up to 8,000 miles per hour, around 13,000 kilometers per hour. These winds would be incredibly powerful and fast enough to erode the surface of any spacecraft attempting to approach the planet. Imagine standing on a world where the air feels thick and suffocating, with violent winds that rip at anything in their path. The atmosphere itself is a violent storm, constantly in flux, shaped by the tidal forces of the parent star and the immense heat. These winds wouldn't just be uncomfortable, they would be lethal, carrying with them the searing heat of the planet's molten surface and burning gases. What makes WASP-12b even more terrifying is that it's not only being consumed by the physical forces at play, but it's also being devoured in a much more metaphysical way. It's a planet caught in a death spiral. Its orbit is so close to its star that it is doomed to eventually be swallowed whole. In the future, as the planet continues to lose its atmosphere, it could get closer and closer to its star until it reaches a point of no return. At that point, the star will likely pull WASP-12b into itself, engulfing the planet completely. This cosmic fate is a reminder that in space, nothing is permanent. Planets, even massive gas giants like WASP-12b, are vulnerable to the immense gravitational and tidal forces that can reduce them to nothing. In fact, scientists believe that in about 10 million years, WASP-12b will no longer exist, its remnants consumed by its parent star, leaving behind no trace. WASP-12b is a planet on the brink of oblivion, a world whose future is written in the stars. Watching this planet slowly die as it is consumed by the hunger of its own star is a reminder that the universe doesn't care for the lives of planets. It is a place of great beauty, yes, but also one of great violence and destruction, where everything is temporary and everything is subject to the whims of forces far greater than anything we could ever comprehend. The sheer closeness of WASP-12b to its star isn't just a quirk of orbital mechanics, it's the heart of its terrifying demise. The planet exists in a constant tug-of-war between the star's overwhelming gravitational pull and the planet's own internal structure, but the star is slowly winning. WASP-12b is spiraling inward, inch by inch, drawn by the relentless gravity of its parent star. This process of orbital decay happens because the planet is so close to its star that the gravitational interactions between the two bodies are slowly changing its orbit. Each orbit brings the planet a little closer to the star, pushing it further into the star's gravitational grip. In time, this effect will cause the planet to spiral in even tighter, eventually being consumed by the star's intense heat and radiation. In a cosmic sense, this is a slow-motion destruction. WASP-12b will likely continue to lose atmosphere and material over the next few million years, until it finally reaches the critical point where it can no longer resist the pull of its star. When that happens, the planet will be drawn into the star where it will be completely consumed. The process is both gradual and horrifying. Watching a planet slowly collapse inward, pulled apart by a celestial force far beyond its control, is a chilling reminder of the fragility of planetary bodies. This scenario is part of a much larger cosmic cycle. Stars like the one that has doomed WASP-12b eventually go through phases of instability, pulling in any planet within their grasp. While most stars will do this to smaller rocky planets, WASP-12b's sheer size and proximity make it an ideal candidate for this cruel fate. As it gets closer to the star, it will enter an environment where it simply cannot survive. And the most terrifying part is, WASP-12b is not alone in this fate. Many other exoplanets are similarly doomed, trapped in orbits that are slowly taking them into the gravitational clutches of their stars. Every single moment on WASP-12b is marked by change, violent, cataclysmic change. The planet's environment is in a constant state of flux, and this instability is what makes it so terrifying. You can never know what to expect on a world like this. One moment, the planet is radiating intense heat, and the next, the wind systems shift, sending molten gas in different directions. It's a dynamic world, yes, but one that is also brutal and unpredictable. This constant transformation means that life, if it ever existed, could never establish a foothold here. The atmosphere is a violent mix of gases constantly being affected by the sun's radiation and the tidal forces acting upon the planet. There's no stability, no safety, no place for organisms to adapt or thrive. Even if we were to try and visit the planet, it would be impossible to find a moment of calm. Every part of WASP-12b's environment is actively hostile to exploration. The planet's surface, if we can call it that, would likely be a thick soup of ionized gases, perhaps with occasional gas storms that could be as destructive as the hurricane-force winds we experience here on Earth. These constant, violent shifts are a constant reminder of the forces at play on a cosmic scale, where even the most massive planets are ultimately nothing more than playthings in the hands of stars. So what will happen when WASP-12b finally reaches its end? After millions of years of slowly losing its atmosphere and being dragged inward, it will eventually be swallowed whole by its star. The immense heat from the star will vaporize the remaining gases and material of the planet, reducing it to nothing more than a cloud of gas and particles. This process is an inevitable end, a cosmic death that has no room for survival or escape. Once WASP-12b has been completely consumed, there will be no trace of it left. It will have been completely devoured, its material dispersed across the vast expanse of space. The planet that once existed, with its searing heat and violent winds, will be nothing but a faint memory, lost to the cosmos forever. This fate is something we can observe from a safe distance, but the terror of it lies in how inevitable it is. No matter how massive or far-reaching a planet's size or atmosphere may be, it is ultimately powerless against the immense forces of the stars that govern the universe. WASP-12b, a planet that once thrived in its own way, is now a ticking clock, slowly counting down to the moment when it will be reduced to nothing. And as we observe it from light years away, it serves as a chilling reminder that even the mightiest worlds are not immune to the forces of nature. Kepler-70b is not only one of the most extreme exoplanets ever discovered, but it's also one of the most terrifying. This planet orbits its star at an incredibly close distance, so close that its surface temperature reaches an unimaginable level. However, Kepler-70b is also cursed by a twisted paradox. It's a molten planet locked in a state of perpetual freezing, a world of fire and ice combined. At first glance, Kepler-70b might appear to be a nightmarish inferno. The planet's proximity to its star makes it one of the hottest places we know. The star it orbits, a post-main sequence star, is in its final stages of life, and it is burning incredibly hot, reaching temperatures that can vaporize any material that gets too close. Kepler-70b exists just within the star's habitable zone, but not in the way we imagine. The extreme heat means that the planet should be an inferno, but the strange composition and orbit of Kepler-70b make it impossible for the planet to reach anything close to equilibrium. Kepler-70b orbits its star in an incredibly fast orbit, completing one revolution every 12 hours. This gives it almost no time to cool down between the scorching radiation it receives and the freezing void of space on the other side. Instead of experiencing the typical day-night cycle that we see here on Earth, the planet is subjected to intense radiation from its star during the day and an icy cold during the night. The strangest aspect of Kepler-70b, though, is that it is thought to have a surface temperature that fluctuates dramatically due to the tug-of-war between the heat from the star and the extreme coldness of space. On the day side of the planet, temperatures could easily exceed 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, about 2,700 degrees Celsius, a constant furnace of energy that seems straight out of a science fiction movie. Yet, as the planet rotates into the night, temperatures plummet to several hundred degrees below freezing, creating an atmosphere that is in a constant state of flux. Kepler 70b isn't just a planet, it's a cosmic anomaly, a planet trapped in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Orbiting so close to its star that it should be a boiling inferno, Kepler 70b defies every expectation by also experiencing extreme cold, creating a nightmare of fire and ice. But that's just the beginning. The planet's orbit takes it so close to its dying star that it completes a full revolution every 12 hours. This is where the nightmare begins. On one side of the planet, it's scorched by radiation so intense that anything exposed to it is vaporized, temperatures that would melt any metal and boil any liquid. Yet, on the other side, as it spins away from the star, temperatures plummet to well below freezing, creating a brutal contrast between two extremes. Kepler 70b is constantly caught between these two forces, with no respite. It doesn't get a break. Every moment is a struggle between searing heat and biting cold, a battle the planet is losing. What makes it even more terrifying is that this isn't a temporary phenomenon. Kepler 70b's star is in the final stages of its life, expanding into a red giant. As this process continues, the planet will spiral ever closer to its doom, eventually being engulfed by the star. But before that, Kepler 70b will undergo a brutal transformation. The temperature extremes will intensify, tearing the planet apart slowly as it loses atmosphere and surface material to the deadly forces at play. The planet will be stretched, cracked, and destabilized until it is swallowed whole by its own star. This isn't just a death, it's a prolonged agony. Kepler 70b is a place where nothing can survive. No life, no stability, no hope. It's an unforgiving furnace that will eventually burn itself out, consumed entirely by the forces it was never meant to endure. This planet doesn't just challenge our understanding of life, it's a reminder of how fragile any world can be in the face of a dying star's wrath. The most chilling part of Kepler 70b's fate is that it is on a death spiral towards its inevitable doom. As the star that Kepler 70b orbits expands and becomes a red giant, it slowly pulls the planet closer. The heat from the expanding star becomes unbearable, and as Kepler 70b's orbit tightens, the temperature fluctuations between its day and night sides become even more extreme. The planet is literally being drawn to its death, slowly but surely. Over the course of millions of years, the planet will continue to lose its atmosphere and surface material due to the intense heat and radiation, and this will only accelerate as the star grows larger. Kepler 70b's fate is sealed. It will eventually be consumed by the very star it depends on. But before this fiery end, the planet will continue to endure an agonizing process, being stretched and torn apart as the gravitational forces of the star tug it into oblivion. This slow, crushing death is what makes Kepler 70b so horrifying. It's not the sudden, catastrophic end of an asteroid collision or a violent explosion. It's a slow, agonizing disintegration. Each year, each day, each hour, Kepler 70b gets closer to its final moments, consumed by the very heat that made it so extreme in the first place. And as it spirals inward, it will eventually be reduced to nothing but vapor and gas, swallowed by the star in a final, tragic embrace. Kepler 70b's existence is a cosmic paradox. It's a planet that shouldn't even be possible. It lives on the edge of a fine line between survival and destruction, constantly teetering between extreme heat and freezing cold. It's a world where life is an impossibility, where stability doesn't exist, and where the forces of nature conspire to destroy it from all sides. What's most terrifying is that Kepler 70b is just one example of how the universe is filled with worlds that are doomed from the start. Planets like this shouldn't exist. Their environments are so extreme, so hostile, that they are essentially living on borrowed time. Kepler 70b's slow destruction is a reminder of the immense forces at work in the universe, forces that no planet, no matter how massive or resilient, can escape. As it continues its slow, fiery march toward oblivion, Kepler 70b remains a planet caught in an impossible situation, unable to survive, yet forced to endure the inevitable. It is a place where life could never flourish, where the only constant is the relentless pull of a dying star. The extremities Kepler-70b faces don't stop at just heat and cold. Its environment is constantly shaped by the volatile forces of its orbit and star. The planet is in a constant state of chaos, pulled in by gravitational forces that stretch and deform its surface. Every orbit brings it closer to a fiery end, each one subjecting Kepler-70b to more unimaginable stress. The tight orbit around its dying star generates immense tidal forces, distorting the planet like a squished balloon. The planet's core is likely under intense pressure, potentially heating up to the point where volcanic activity could be rampant, though there's no way of knowing for sure, as the planet's surface may not be stable enough to form any lasting features. What we can infer from the forces at play is that the planet is in a constant state of deformation. Tectonic shifts, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes would all be commonplace. The surface could be repeatedly torn apart, only to be reformed again and again in a violent cycle. As the planet experiences such horrific conditions, its surface could become riddled with scars. Cracks in the crust would open up and close again as it is forced between the intense heat of the day side and the freezing temperatures of the night side. This constant expansion and contraction would tear apart the rocks, throwing up plumes of vapor and gas into the atmosphere. Kepler-70b's surface would be a constantly shifting landscape, impossible to predict, full of violent eruptions and churning magma. Despite these catastrophic forces at play, the most chilling thing about Kepler-70b is that nothing can stop its inevitable end. As the star expands, it will eventually reach a point where it engulfs the planet. The planet will be consumed, dragged into the heart of the star, where it will be vaporized in a final, brutal moment. There will be no escape, no chance for the planet to slip away into the safety of space. Kepler-70b's slow demise will be a drawn-out process. For millions of years, the planet will experience slow but steady destruction, each moment a harsh reminder of the inevitable. It will be stretched and pulled until it can no longer hold together, torn apart in every possible way. As the planet is finally swallowed by the star, it will cease to exist in any recognizable form. It will be absorbed into the star's outer layers, dissipating into gas and dust, a forgotten relic of a world that was never meant to survive. The idea of a planet living out its days in such a slow, agonizing death is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Kepler-70b's existence. It's a place that's locked in a constant battle with its environment, only to be undone by forces it can never escape. No matter how resilient the planet may be, there is no way for it to withstand the forces of its dying star. Kepler-70b is a reminder that the universe is full of worlds that are just as inhospitable and cruel. There are planets that exist in conditions that should be impossible, and Kepler-70b is one of the most extreme examples of this. It is a place where the natural laws seem to be at their most unforgiving, where the forces of heat, cold, and radiation will eventually bring the planet to its knees. As it dances with the forces of destruction, Kepler-70b will never escape its fate. The planet's ultimate death is a cosmic certainty, a tragic and terrifying end that will take millions of years to unfold. But in the end, it is a planet that should never have existed in the first place. A world caught in a perfect storm of cosmic forces, doomed from the start. There are planets that are just too extreme to be real. HD 8CO606b is one of those places. Located about 190 light-years from Earth, this exoplanet is a horrifying example of how close a planet can get to its star and still survive, but not in a way that any living thing would want. The planet has one of the most eccentric orbits ever discovered, which brings it dangerously close to its star in just the right way to create some truly nightmarish conditions. HD 80606b is a gas giant, and its orbit is so elliptical that it takes about 111 days to complete a full orbit around its star. But what makes this planet terrifying is the way its orbit brings it in closer and closer to its star. For much of its orbit, HD 80606b is a safe distance away from the star. But then, like a cosmic roller coaster, it swings so close that it's almost within the star's grasp. At its closest point, the planet is just 0.03 AU away from its star, a distance so close that it's nearly swallowed by the star's radiating heat. This close approach results in heat surges so intense that the atmosphere becomes turbulent, creating massive temperature fluctuations. One day on HD 8606b doesn't resemble anything we know here on Earth. It's a day that lasts only 11 hours because the planet is constantly racing through its orbit. It zips through the star's radiation at breakneck speeds, subjecting the planet to severe heating and cooling cycles. When the planet is closest to its star, the temperature can rise to a searing 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,093 degrees Celsius. But as it moves away from the star, the temperature plummets rapidly, dropping to near freezing. This extreme temperature shift, repeated every 11 hours, means the planet is a battleground for ever-changing conditions. The extreme temperatures aren't just a side effect of the planet's orbit, they're directly caused by the intense radiation it receives from its star. At its closest point, the planet is bathed in radiation that would be enough to melt anything on its surface. The amount of radiation hitting the planet is so intense that it causes extreme heating in the upper atmosphere, which then expands into space. This constant bombardment strips away the atmosphere bit by bit, sending it into the void. The atmosphere of HD 8606b is in a constant state of flux. At its closest approach to the star, the planet's upper atmosphere would likely be pushed into a highly ionized state due to the sheer heat. The heat is so intense that it causes the gases to become more turbulent, and the atmosphere could even enter a state of chaotic windstorms, whipping the planet with hurricane-force winds. Even the lower atmosphere is not safe from this searing heat. With the temperatures reaching such extreme levels, there's a constant battle between gas molecules as they move faster and faster, trying to escape the planet's gravitational pull. HD 806606b's atmosphere is likely a mix of hydrogen, helium, and other volatile compounds, all being constantly stripped away, only to be replaced by more volatile gas in an eternal cycle of destruction. The true horror of HD 80606b lies in its unforgiving and volatile conditions. The planet's extreme proximity to its star, combined with the gravitational forces acting on it, means that the planet's surface is in constant flux. There is no stability here. The conditions are always changing, creating a world where no life form could possibly survive. The planet's eccentric orbit also means that it doesn't have a stable environment. The violent swings between extreme heat and cold mean that any atmosphere it may have once had is constantly being evaporated and reformed. It's like the planet is dying in real time, pulled into an eternal cycle of self-destruction. The intense radiation combined with the rapid temperature fluctuations makes HD 8006b a place that, even if it had once had the potential for life, now has no hope for survival. The atmosphere is being sucked away by the relentless forces acting on it, and the planet's surface is exposed to the unrelenting rays of its star. Over time, the planet's mass will be slowly lost and will continue on its path toward complete destruction, all while the cycle of heat and cold continues to destroy whatever is left of it. Eventually, HD 8606b will reach a point where it can no longer recover from the stress of its orbit. The constant bombardment from its star, combined with its extreme distance and velocity, means that the planet will continue to lose material over time. There will come a point where it will have lost so much of its atmosphere that it will no longer resemble the planet it once was. Its slow spiral towards oblivion will continue as the planet loses its mass, and one day it may simply drift too far from its star to remain in orbit. As the planet's material fades away into space, it will become a lifeless, barren remnant of a once majestic world. HD 80606b's ultimate fate is a slow, painful death, one that will unfold over millions of years, but there's no escaping the inevitable end. GJ-1240b is a super-Earth exoplanet that lies about 40 light-years away in the constellation of Ophiuchus. While it may seem like a fascinating world from a scientific standpoint, the conditions on this planet are far from welcoming. This is a planet where the forces of nature have taken an unsettling turn, creating a world that should not exist in the way it does. GJ-1214b is often called a water world, but that description is far from idyllic. The planet is roughly 2.7 times the size of Earth and has a mass that is about 6.5 times greater. What truly sets it apart is its atmosphere, which is believed to be thick with steam, water vapor, and clouds. In fact, this planet's surface is entirely covered by a vast, dense atmosphere, where the water is not in liquid form as we know it, but in an incredibly hot, superheated steam state. The temperature on GJ124b is scorching, with surface temperatures reaching over 450 degrees Fahrenheit, 230 degrees Celsius. This is hot enough to cause water to evaporate, but because of the immense atmospheric pressure, the water vapor stays trapped in the atmosphere. This thick, cloud-covered blanket of water vapor would make the surface of GJ124b a place of constant, searing humidity. There's no escape from the heat. Every inch of this planet is drowning in an atmosphere so thick with water vapor that it's as if the entire planet is trapped in an endless storm. The pressure on GJ124b is something that no human could ever survive. With a gravity much stronger than Earth's, the planet exerts a crushing force on anything that dares to land on its surface. The atmosphere is dense, and the sheer weight of the air itself could easily crush a spacecraft or anything else trying to explore its surface. The pressure is so high that even the water vapor in the air is under intense compression, turning into something much denser than typical steam. This crushing atmosphere would make any form of exploration an impossible task. The pressure alone is enough to destroy even the most advanced machinery. And it's not just the atmospheric pressure that's terrifying. The surface conditions are unlike anything Earth-based life could endure. As if the intense heat and pressure weren't enough, the atmosphere of GJ124b behaves more like a global storm system. The planet is blanketed by dense clouds made of water vapor, which would likely perpetuate violent weather patterns across the entire planet. Imagine a world where every inch is saturated with moisture, where the atmosphere itself is thick with boiling steam that constantly churns. This creates an environment that is not just hot, but perpetually turbulent, with winds that would be strong enough to tear apart any unprotected object. The planet's atmosphere is also likely home to constant electrical storms, powered by the high levels of heat and moisture. These storms could rage across the planet, releasing massive amounts of energy in the form of lightning, which would only add to the overall chaos of the environment. The storms could be continuous, tearing apart the clouds and creating a never-ending cycle of violent weather. Despite the constant presence of clouds and steam, the surface of GJ124b remains a mystery. Scientists speculate that beneath the thick atmosphere, there could be oceans or a rocky core, but with conditions so extreme, it is almost impossible to confirm. What is known, however, is that the surface would be subjected to immense geological activity, possibly volcanic eruptions and seismic activity. The high pressure and heat might cause the planet's crust to be unstable, making it prone to violent shifts and eruptions. The idea of an ocean on GJ124b is terrifying in itself. If an ocean of superheated water does exist, it would not resemble anything we know. This ocean would likely be composed of boiling hot water vapor mixing with molten rock from below, creating an ever-changing and unstable landscape. A world of searing clouds and unpredictable geological chaos is a nightmare for anyone imagining a future here. With constant eruptions, shifting landmasses, and boiling waters, this planet is far from anything that could sustain life. Even if life could exist in some form here, the conditions on GJ124b make survival nearly impossible. The combination of intense heat, crushing atmospheric pressure, and violent storms creates a world that would be hostile to any life form known to humanity. Any organism trying to survive in such an environment would have to withstand unimaginable forces. The planet's constant high temperatures would likely prevent any liquid water from existing on its surface in the way we understand it. Instead, any water would exist as superheated steam, which wouldn't be able to support biological processes like life. The environment is not just hot, it's too extreme for life to adapt. There are no oceans or lakes as we know them. There are only boiling clouds, unrelenting heat, and crushing pressure. Even if life did find a way to survive in such an environment, it would likely be on the edge of extinction. The volatile conditions, from the boiling atmosphere to the constant geological upheaval, would keep life constantly at the brink of disaster. GJ124b represents a world that might have once had the potential for life, but now it is a hostile, uninhabitable wasteland, slowly transforming into something that could never sustain any living being. Even though GJ-12-B currently survives in a state of constant turmoil, its fate is sealed. Over time, the planet is being slowly stripped of its atmosphere by the forces of its star. The planet's atmosphere is incredibly thick, composed of gases that are constantly being heated and evaporated, but it cannot last forever. The intense radiation from its star is slowly eating away at the outer layers of the atmosphere. As the star's radiation continues to bombard GJ-12-B, the atmosphere will gradually escape into space, leaving the planet exposed to the harsh vacuum of the cosmos. Eventually, it will lose so much of its atmosphere that it will no longer be able to sustain the high-pressure environment that makes it so terrifying. Without this protective, dense atmosphere, the surface will become a barren wasteland, devoid of the steam and clouds that make GJ-12-B so hostile. The cooling of the atmosphere and surface will make this once scorching world a cold, empty place, a stark contrast to its current hellish state. Once the atmosphere is gone, there will be nothing left to shield the planet from the star's radiation or to keep the surface from becoming inhospitable. GJ-12-B will transform into a lifeless, barren world, drifting through space, forever a reminder of a planet that once had the potential to be much more, but ultimately was destroyed by its own brutal environment. What truly makes GJ-12-B terrifying is the sheer unpredictability of its environment. It is a planet that shouldn't exist in the way it does. Its extreme conditions, from superheated water vapor to crushing atmospheric pressure, create an uninhabitable world that would tear apart anything trying to survive there. It's a planet that presents no possibility of escape or survival. There is no refuge from the heat or pressure, and the constant turmoil of the weather only exacerbates the bleakness of the world. But what makes this planet even more chilling is the fact that this is a common occurrence in the universe. There are many other exoplanets out there, just like GJ-12-B, where the conditions are so extreme that they could never sustain life. The vastness of the universe is full of worlds that are trapped in endless cycles of destruction, worlds that, much like GJ-12-B, are doomed to fade away into nothingness. The final fate of GJ-12-B is one of isolation and loneliness. As it loses its atmosphere and slowly cools, it will become just another lifeless planet drifting aimlessly through space. There will be no witnesses to its fall, no rescue ships to save it, and no life left to experience its destruction. GJ-12-B will remain a lonely, scorched, and empty rock, a silent testament to a planet that shouldn't have been. LHS 3844b is a rocky exoplanet located about 48.6 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Libra. It is one of the most terrifying planets discovered in recent years because of its extreme conditions. LHS 3844b's proximity to parent star and its lack of atmosphere make it a world where survival is utterly impossible. Without an atmosphere to trap heat, the surface of this planet faces extreme temperature swings. On the day side, the temperature can soar to around 800 degrees Fahrenheit, 427 degrees Celsius, while the night side plunges to a freezing -330 degrees Fahrenheit, -201 degrees Celsius. This extreme temperature difference makes LHS 3844b a world that could not possibly sustain life. No organism could survive the unrelenting heat of the day, nor could it handle the bone-chilling cold of the night. The lack of atmosphere means that the planet is also exposed to cosmic radiation, and without any protective ozone layer, the surface would be bombarded by harmful radiation from space. This adds another layer of danger, making the environment even more hostile to any form of life if it ever existed. LHS 3844b is not only a planet with extreme temperatures, but its surface is likely a barren, lifeless desert. The lack of an atmosphere means there is no erosion or weathering, so the surface of the planet remains a vast expanse of rock. The heat on the day side has likely caused the rock to become charred and scorched, while the night side remains a frozen wasteland. The surface is probably made up of cracked and jagged rocks, a place where nothing could grow or thrive. With no atmosphere to help shape the landscape, it is just a barren, empty world with no features of interest or beauty. The planet is stuck in a state of desolation, where nothing ever changes and nothing ever lives. LHS 3844b's lack of water is another contributing factor to its uninhabitability. Water is essential for life as we know it, and without it, the planet is a lifeless desert. Any water that might have once existed on LHS 384b would have evaporated long ago due to the extreme heat. Without the ability to form clouds or precipitation, the planet is stuck in a dry, scorching environment that has no possibility of nurturing any form of life. This lack of water creates a barren, dusty world where the landscape remains unchanged over eons. There's no possibility of rainfall to rejuvenate the surface, and without any rivers, lakes, or oceans, the planet is essentially a forgotten desert floating through space, forever locked in a state of hopelessness. One of the most disturbing aspects of LHS 384b is its day-night cycle. The planet is tidally locked to its parent star, meaning one side of the planet is always facing the star while the other side remains in permanent darkness. The result is a world with a literal day side and night side, but there is no transition between them, just a constant, unyielding daylight on one half of the planet and a never-ending night on the other. On the day side, the relentless heat and radiation from the star would cause temperatures to soar to unbearable levels. This constant exposure to the heat of the star would further scorch the surface, turning it into a bleak, lifeless wasteland. The planet's inability to rotate and its lack of an atmosphere to redistribute heat means that the temperature differential between the two sides would only continue to grow more extreme over time. On the night side, however, the absence of the star means the planet is exposed to the cold depths of space. The freezing temperatures on this side of the planet would create a stark contrast to the heat on the opposite side. The planet essentially becomes a world of extremes, where life could never exist, nor could anything adapt to such a harsh and unforgiving environment. Because LHS 3844b has no protective atmosphere, it is constantly bombarded by cosmic radiation. This radiation comes from all directions in space and has no way of being deflected or absorbed. The surface of the planet is exposed to high levels of ultraviolet radiation and X-rays, which would destroy any biological material within seconds. The surface would be sterilized, making it an inhospitable wasteland where even the most resilient forms of life would be wiped out. Without an atmosphere to protect it, the planet's surface is continually exposed to the harsh elements of space. The intense radiation would strip away any remaining chemical compounds necessary for life, ensuring that no form of existence could take root. The endless bombardment from space would strip the planet of anything resembling a habitable environment, leaving behind nothing but a barren, lifeless rock drifting through the universe. The starkest reminder of the planet's uninhabitability is its lack of any form of life or vegetation. The extreme temperatures, lack of water, and exposure to radiation make it impossible for anything to grow on the planet's surface. The lack of an atmosphere ensures that there is no protection from the heat or cold, meaning that no biological processes could take place. If you could stand on LHS 3844b, which again, you can't, you'd find yourself surrounded by an endless stretch of cracked, charred rock. With no clouds to block the harsh rays of the star or to provide shade, the landscape would be bathed in constant, unrelenting sunlight, creating an environment that feels as if time itself has stood still. There would be no plants to offer shade, no wildlife to give the planet any sense of life, just a desolate, unchanging world of endless heat and cold. Perhaps the most terrifying part of LHS 3844b is that this planet will never change. The lack of atmosphere, the extreme temperatures, and the constant exposure to cosmic radiation mean that there is no hope for the future. Unlike Earth, where geological forces reshape the surface over millions of years, LHS 3844b will remain locked in a perpetual state of death. Without any atmosphere to create weather patterns or winds to stir the surface, the planet's surface will remain unchanged for billions of years. The scorched, barren desert will continue to be a lifeless rock, drifting through the cosmos. There will be no natural forces to alter its course, and no signs of life to ever emerge. LHS 3844b is locked in a state of eternal stillness, where no event, no change, and no form of life will ever disrupt the dead silence. 55 Cancri E, located approximately 440 light-years away from Earth, is one of the most extreme exoplanets ever discovered. This planet is a lava world, entirely dominated by molten rock, with temperatures so high that its entire surface is likely to be covered in vast oceans of magma. Imagine standing on a planet where everything around you is in a constant state of violent meltdown. 55 Cancri E orbits very close to its parent star, so close that the temperature on the planet is intense enough to melt metals. The day side of the planet reaches temperatures of up to 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than the surface of Venus and hotter than some stars. This extreme heat means that any solid surface would be melted into a sea of lava, with rivers of molten rock flowing endlessly across the planet. The atmosphere on this planet is also toxic and unsuitable for life as we know it. The heat and the constant volcanic activity create a hostile, unbearable environment. No matter where you look on this planet, you would be faced with an ever-changing, violent landscape dominated by fiery lava oceans. While the day side of 55 Cancri is a boiling, molten wasteland, the night side of the planet is just as terrifying in its own right. Given the extreme proximity to its parent star, 55 Cancri A is tidally locked, meaning one side always faces the star while the other is in perpetual darkness. The night side of the planet is cold, but it's still far from a peaceful, frozen wasteland. The atmosphere, though searing hot on the day side, is likely to have winds that carry extreme temperatures across the planet's surface. As the volcanic eruptions and lava rivers continue to rage on the day side, gases, ash, and debris would be carried by high-speed winds into the night side. This constant cycle creates a planet with no stability, winds whipping molten rock and poisonous gases across the entire surface, making it impossible for any form of life or stability to form. Another terrifying aspect of 55 Cancri A is its never-ending cycle of destruction. Due to its close orbit to the star, the planet is constantly being bombarded by intense radiation. The radiation strips away any chance for an atmosphere to protect the surface, and this leads to continuous volcanic eruptions and instability in the planet's environment. The molten rivers and volcanic activity would never cease, creating an eternally turbulent world, trapped in a cycle of never-ending destruction. The planet's extreme conditions would likely have any remaining metals on its surface melting into pools of liquid iron. Even elements like silicon, which would normally solidify, would find themselves in liquid form, adding to the ocean of magma that dominates the planet's surface. Even for the most rugged, durable materials, the heat would prove too much, disintegrating anything in its path. The atmosphere of 55 Cancri A is as hostile as the molten surface. Made up of hydrogen, helium, and likely a mix of toxic gases, the atmosphere is thick and oppressive, with temperatures soaring to over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,200 degrees Celsius. On the sunlit side, the atmosphere is likely superheated and distorted, with violent storms ripping through it. The winds themselves could easily melt metals, and any attempt to probe the planet would be futile, as no conventional material could withstand the scorching heat or intense radiation for long. The atmosphere would also be highly unstable, constantly shifting due to the intense heat from the star. With gases moving at extreme speeds, the planet would experience turbulent conditions akin to a never-ending storm. Any spacecraft or probe attempting to enter the atmosphere would be vaporized almost immediately, disintegrating long before it could get a close-up view of the planetary hellscape. Even the most advanced technology would stand little chance of surviving in such an environment. 55 Cancri E's close orbit around its star is slowly pulling it closer, which could ultimately spell its doom. As the planet spirals inward toward its parent star, the temperatures will continue to rise, and the volcanic activity will become even more intense. The planet could eventually be consumed by its star, completely disintegrating and disappearing into the void
This
of
can help
space.
fix.
This fate is not unique to 55 Cancri E, as many planets that orbit their stars too closely eventually meet similar ends. However, the terrifying nature of this world lies in the brutal, unyielding heat and violent volcanic activity that dominates its surface. The planet is an example of what happens when a world is forced to exist in a hellish environment, one that it can never escape from. 55 Cancri E's proximity to its star ensures that it remains one of the hottest planets known to exist. The planet's day side, constantly bathed in the light of its star, reaches temperatures upwards of 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius. This scorching heat is sufficient to melt iron, and it turns the entire surface into an ocean of lava. This extreme heat makes the planet completely inhospitable to any form of life. There would be no air, no liquid water, and no conditions even remotely conducive to survival. Imagine a vast world entirely covered by molten rock stretching endlessly under a blazing sky. The molten rivers, flowing like liquid fire, would cover the surface with no respite from the heat. The volcanic activity, driven by the intense radiation from the star, would continuously release ash, gases, and lava, making the surface an ever-shifting inferno. The sky itself would likely be filled with smoke and debris, casting an eerie, hazy glow across the landscape. 55 Cancri E's gravity is significantly stronger than Earth's due to its higher mass and the fact that it orbits so close to its parent star. This creates extreme tidal forces, which play a major role in the planet's continuous volcanic activity. The constant gravitational interaction with its star causes the planet's interior to heat up, fueling violent eruptions that send lava fountains shooting into the air. These eruptions are not just isolated events, they are a constant occurrence, creating an ever-evolving landscape of molten rock and fiery chaos. On a planet like 55 Cancri E, volcanic eruptions would release vast amounts of heat and gases into the atmosphere, creating pressure systems that would be nothing short of terrifying. These eruptions would not only reshape the surface of the planet, but also contribute to its incredibly hostile atmosphere. The landscape would be dynamic and dangerous, constantly shifting as eruptions give way to new lava flows, making the planet's environment unstable and unpredictable. The presence of volcanoes would mean that no part of the planet is ever safe, as the lava and ash could rain down at any moment. The continuous volcanic activity and tidal forces also contribute to the distortion of the planet's shape. 55 Cancri E's surface would likely be covered in fissures and cracks, as the planet's outer layer is continually pushed and pulled by the gravitational forces at work. This means that the land would constantly be shifting, creating new hazards that could be devastating to anyone unfortunate enough to be on the surface. As if the extreme heat and volcanic activity weren't enough, the atmosphere of 55 Cancri E is another source of terror. With winds that could reach over 3,000 miles per hour, 5,000 kilometers per hour, the atmosphere is constantly in turmoil. The winds would carry molten rock and debris, making the entire surface inhospitable. Even the sturdiest of materials would be incapable of withstanding the intense heat and pressure caused by these winds. The winds are not only fast, but also incredibly destructive. The atmosphere would be filled with ash, sulfur, and other toxic gases released by the volcanic eruptions. The presence of these gases would make the air unbreathable, adding to the planet's inhospitable nature. These winds would also contribute to the destruction of any atmosphere that could potentially form on the planet, further exacerbating its already inhospitable conditions. With no stable atmosphere to protect it, the planet's surface is left exposed to the full brunt of the star's radiation. Speaking of radiation, 55 Cancri E is constantly bombarded with intense radiation from its star. The radiation levels are so high that they prevent the formation of any sort of protective ozone layer or atmosphere that could shield the planet from its deadly rays. This constant bombardment would strip away any potential for life, as the radiation would tear apart any organic molecules before they had a chance to take form. The planet is locked in a state of perpetual destruction, its surface scorched by radiation and molten rock. The most terrifying aspect of 55 Cancri E is its eternal cycle of destruction. Because the planet is tidally locked, it will always have one face exposed to its parent star, constantly experiencing the extreme heat and volcanic activity. The night side, which is in perpetual darkness, is subject to freezing temperatures, but this side also experiences wind and atmospheric conditions that are just as dangerous as the heat on the day side. The planet's relationship with its star is such that the star's gravity continues to pull it closer, ensuring that the planet's conditions will only worsen as time goes on. As it spirals ever closer to the star, the tidal forces will continue to stretch and distort the planet's surface, increasing the volcanic activity and melting any solid material it comes into contact with. The planet is trapped in an unrelenting cycle of volcanic eruptions, lava flows, and extreme heat that will never end. There is no way for the planet to escape the influence of its parent star, ensuring that it will remain a molten, fiery hellscape for eternity. This eternal cycle of destruction is what makes 55 Cancri so terrifying. It's a planet that has no chance of recovery, no possibility of life, and no escape from the constant bombardment by its star. The forces at work on this planet are so powerful that they have completely reshaped its destiny, turning it into a place where nothing could ever survive. Kelt 9b's unrelenting heat makes it one of the most extreme planets ever discovered. The sheer intensity of its environment defies all expectations of what a gas giant should be. With temperatures reaching up to 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit, 4,300 degrees Celsius, this planet exists in a state of constant destruction, where even the most durable materials known to science would not stand a chance of survival. What makes Kelt 9b even more terrifying is that its atmosphere is literally evaporating into space. The immense radiation from its parent star bombards the planet, stripping away its upper layers and turning it into a massive, searing cloud of gas. Over time, this process will cause the planet to shrink, gradually losing mass until it either becomes a burnt-out husk or is completely consumed by its star. This relentless loss of atmosphere creates a comet-like tail of superheated gas trailing behind the planet. If you could observe Kelt 9b from a distance, you would see it as a glowing, distorted orb, surrounded by a swirling mass of vaporized metals and charged particles. It wouldn't look like a planet at all, but rather a blazing inferno, barely holding itself together against the brutal forces of its sun. Adding to its nightmarish nature, Kelt 9b's skies are a battlefield of extreme weather. The planet's winds, moving at thousands of miles per hour, whip across the atmosphere with enough force to tear apart anything in their path. These winds carry scorching hot gases and metallic vapors, creating an atmosphere so violent that it would destroy any probe or spacecraft long before it could reach the planet's surface. Lightning storms, fueled by the intense heat and charged particles in the air, would regularly rip through the planet's skies. The flashes of light would illuminate the swirling clouds of vaporized iron and titanium, casting an eerie glow over the planet's molten storms. Any observer would be met with a sight straight out of a cosmic horror story, a world on fire, constantly being torn apart by forces beyond comprehension. Kelt 9b's days are numbered. As it continues its doomed orbit, it will only get hotter, more unstable, and more volatile until one day it finally falls into its star. When that moment comes, it won't be a peaceful end. Instead, the planet will be violently ripped apart, with its remaining atmosphere and gases consumed in a final, fiery spectacle. A world that should not exist, Kelt 9b is the very definition of a planetary nightmare. It is a place where the heat of a star meets the fury of a storm, where even the laws of physics struggle to keep up with the sheer brutality of its environment. It is a reminder that in the vastness of space, there are places so extreme, so utterly inhospitable, that they defy everything we thought we knew about the universe. Kelt 9b's terrifying existence is a testament to the extremes that planets can endure under the relentless influence of their parent stars. Every moment, the planet is being reshaped by forces so powerful that they defy our understanding of planetary stability. Unlike the relatively peaceful balance that Earth enjoys, Kelt 9b is caught in an ongoing battle against the gravitational pull of its star, the searing heat that keeps its surface in a state of constant vaporization, and the chaotic storms that rip through its upper atmosphere. The presence of metallic vapors in the atmosphere, iron and titanium turned into gas, creates an environment unlike anything seen in our solar system. These elements, which form the foundations of planets, buildings, and even our own blood, exist in a surreal, shifting state on Kelt 9b. Instead of forming solid ground, they swirl in the atmosphere, condensing into microscopic metallic raindrops before being vaporized once again by the scorching heat below. This cycle of destruction and renewal gives the planet an otherworldly glow, making it appear like a pulsating ember in the darkness of space. The winds on Kelt 9b don't just move fast, they act like blades carrying clouds of vaporized metals at thousands of miles per hour. If anything were unfortunate enough to enter this environment, it would be shredded apart by the sheer force of these turbulent storms, disintegrating long before it could reach the planet's surface. Even if some kind of alien material could survive the heat, it would be eroded over time, with its atoms literally being stripped away and carried off into space. And yet, despite its horrific conditions, Kelt 9b is slowly dying. The same forces that have made it so extreme are also ensuring its inevitable destruction. The planet's atmosphere is steadily being peeled away, its mass shrinking bit by bit as its orbit decays. One day, perhaps sooner than we think in cosmic terms, it will no longer exist as a planet at all, just a diffuse cloud of vapor, a ghost of what was once the hottest world ever discovered. Its fate is a reminder that not all planets are lucky enough to find a stable place in the universe. Some, like Kelt 9b, are doomed from the start, existing only to be torn apart, melted down, and eventually erased. A world of fire, wind, and metal, Kelt 9b is a nightmare made real, a burning beacon of destruction in the vast, uncaring void of space. Gliese 436b's extreme volatility makes it one of the most dangerous and fascinating planets in the universe. The high concentrations of hydrogen and methane, coupled with the intense heat from its close orbit to its parent star, create a recipe for constant instability. Any attempt to explore the planet would be met with lethal conditions, from toxic atmospheric gases to violent, unpredictable weather patterns. The atmosphere itself is a deadly cocktail, constantly churning with electrical storms, flashes of lightning, and extreme windstorms. These violent atmospheric conditions make any exploration attempts essentially futile. A ship or probe would be vulnerable to electrical discharges and powerful winds, which could cause significant damage or outright destruction. Studying the planet in detail is a challenge, as the storms would obscure any clear observation, adding layers of danger to an already hostile world. What makes Gliese 436b even more terrifying is its apparent fate. The planet's tight orbit and intense tidal forces exert tremendous stress on its structure, gradually pulling it closer to its star. Over time, this gravitational pull will continue to weaken the planet, potentially leading to its destruction. It could be torn apart or consumed by its star, a catastrophic end to an already catastrophic world. The constant stretching and compression of Gliese 436b, along with its extreme temperature fluctuations, ensure that the planet's surface remains in a state of chaos. Volcanic activity, radiation storms, and relentless tidal heating will only increase as the planet spirals toward its inevitable end. The planet's future is sealed, and while it might still exist for millions of years, its fate is clear. It is a ticking time bomb, teetering on the brink of destruction. In the grand scheme of the universe, Gliese 436b serves as a stark reminder of how stars can shape and break worlds. The planet's volatile, hostile nature showcases the immense power stars have to twist and warp the fate of orbiting planets. It stands as a testament to the unpredictability of the cosmos, a fiery, dangerous relic of a dying world.